Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video in the 12 Days of Deltarune. We're really getting to the end of them. Deltarune is coming soon. Deltarune tomorrow. Anyway, today we're going to be doing Deltarune Classpecting, which is something from Homestuck. It's very complicated. It's going to be hard for me to explain. But essentially what it boils down to is essentially it's an RPG class and then like an RPG element. However, there's a bunch of stuff that goes along with each RPG class and element, which is how you can figure out characters from non-Homestuck as a certain class and element. For example, I think probably the easiest one on this board is Caddy with an eye. Caddy feels very much like a part of the Doom aspect. The Doom aspect is all about, sort of seeing the worst in things, I guess. Getting dealt a bad hand, but also being someone who cares about other people who are also in a similar situation. Like, it's sort of being the friend group's vent channel. Almost. That's like the best way I could say it. So in my little notes, because I made little notes that I could reference through this, so I didn't have to constantly go back to the wiki. I have that they are sufferers, they are the vent channel, and that they're fatalistic. They're pessimists, they see the worst in things, that sort of deal. So Doom is this green gas mask right here, so we're going to fit Caddy into this category. But which class is she now? That's a little harder. So as you can see, there are a lot of classes. It's Mage, Witch, I'm doing them in row from top to bottom, Knight, Sylph, Maid, Seer, Page, Heir, the Air Chair. It's the best way I figured to do an heir. It's like a throne, I guess. Bard, Prince, Rogue, and Thief. And generally, the reason why there's so many that sound similar, like what's the difference between a rogue and a thief? What's the difference between a knight and a page, even though those ones aren't connected? Or a witch and a mage? Is that they tend to be either active or passive. So, as an example, we'll just do witch and mage connected? No. See, this is the problem, is not all of these are concrete. It's just a lot of guesswork. But okay, two that are connected, that are active and passive, is thief and rogue. So, a thief is someone who takes whatever their aspect is for themselves. While a rogue is someone who takes whatever their aspect is for everyone. A thief is active. They're actively seeking out this glory, let's say. Whereas a rogue is passive and is just sort of sharing whatever their aspect is with the group in sort of a RPG party sense. I don't think Caddy is either of those, though. I think maybe the best thing for her is it's either Seer or Maid. Maid is one of the ones we know the least about from actual Homestuck, but I have it as someone who protects their aspect, because the maids that we have in Homestuck are all, like, Aradia is the one I'm thinking about most, is all about essentially like cleaning up the timeline, and she's the maid of time. You could say that. Like, she's protecting her relationship with Noel, which is mostly based off of Noel venting about her day's events to Caddy, and that's basically their relationship, and she's protective of that. But maybe Seer makes more sense. She essentially is like guiding Noel through Doom. Which that feels about right. She does have the vibes of a Seer, just like constantly in the background and trying to direct people in which way to go. Like when you talk to her as Chris, she says that Chris should do whatever they can to essentially keep Suzy away from Noel, because Noel's obsessed with her and she thinks Suzy sucks. So that kind of feels right. A Seer of Doom. Ooh. That sounds like a terrible fate, to be the Seer of Doom. Anyway, we're just going to go 1 and 1, I guess. So we did a lightener, let's do a darkener. Rules. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do rules. Actually, Rules' aspect is very obvious to me. Rules is definitely hope aspect. The hope aspect is all about sucking ass at something, but having the potential to be incredible at it. What do I have written down here in my notes for it? Lawful good. Oh, yeah. Because they want to do things that they think are right, even if they're not particularly right. So that's what I... Positive and narrow-minded. Yeah, so they want to, build up whatever their aspect is, or whatever with their class. They want to build up hope for whatever they think is the best outcome, which for rules would be serving under an evil ruler. But they're narrow-minded, which also sounds like rules. He's not flexible enough to actually get there, and he sucks ass at being a henchman. I was gonna say goon. Henchman for evil rulers. So that fits very well to me. And I think I just have to go with Page of Hope, which is the canon one in Homestuck. Well, the canon one we see most of the page, which talks about the kind of fucking up part of what I was just saying. The hope aspect is essentially just inspiring people to do the right thing, and what the right thing is might not be what the actual right thing is. It's just what you feel the right thing is. And then the page is someone who sucks ass and then grows to be better at their aspect. So yeah, rules really feels like he fits in there. He's trying to inspire you to be a better evil ruler, which is what he thinks would be good for everyone. Okay, Suzy. Oh boy. By the way, I forgot to mention this at the beginning. I was going to. You very well might disagree with a lot of these, because it's kind of like... what was the other thing that I described as a Rorschach test? Oh yeah, it was politics theory, where you can just kind of assign anything to anyone, and it's like, oh yeah, that can kind of make sense. So feel free to leave a list in the comments of yours, your Classpecting for all these characters. You might have to go to the Homestuck class and Homestuck aspect wiki pages and just try to, read up a bit more on them. But hey, Suzy. I'm leaning towards right away. Rage, which is this purple one right here, so it fits perfectly, purple. And the reason I'm leaning towards rage is because rage is the aspect of essentially tearing things down to build them back up again. Whether the building back up again actually happens is not their problem. So I've got it written down as chaotic, revolutionary, and cruel. But that feels more like Chapter 1 Suzy than Chapter 2 Suzy, which is kind of the problem I'm having here. I do think, that... I was going to say that aspect, whatever. Pun intended, I guess. Of her character might carry forward into her sort of new incarnation. Her willingness to tear a bad thing down to try to build something better does feel like it goes hand in hand with just the way she acts, you know what I mean? Which I do believe there's actually a class that's all about building something better. Which one is that? No, I think maybe I was just thinking of the description for rage, the rage aspect. Oh no, it's mind that's about, building things. Well, I don't think Suzy fits mind though. That's cerebral architects that are indecisive. That's not it. Okay, she definitely seems active versus passive, so her class should probably be something that's more proactive. Maybe Knight? Maybe? Knight is one that's kind of up in the air, despite the fact that one of the main characters is a knight. But Knight, I have it as serving their aspect, because that's basically what Dave is doing the entire time. He essentially just has to figure out time even though he doesn't want to. So the idea that Suzy has to, like, rebuild the world from the ground up even though she doesn't want to, like, for the betterment of everyone, that feels right, maybe. Also, it's ironic because, you know, the hero, the knight in shining armor kind of thing. She doesn't feel like she wants to be a hero at the beginning. Yeah, it's all coming full circle. I could definitely be convinced of something else with this one, but that feels alright. I think Rage definitely makes sense. Class, I don't know. Let's try to do Lancer, because I feel like Lancer is going to be really hard. Lancer... I mean, well... I've got two potential ones for Lancer, I think. And those two potential aspects are blood and breath. So blood deals with essentially bonds. They're the sort of leader types, even if they don't want to be. Whereas breath is all about being like adaptable and inspiring by example, essentially. Which I think maybe breath makes more sense in this case, because Lancer isn't trying to be inspiring to Suzy to, like, be a better person, right? It's just through being Lancer that Lancer is able to guide Suzy on a better path, which feels very much like breath. Breath is all about being adaptable, inspiring, but also avoidant, which Lancer is also avoidant. He doesn't want to deal with the problem of his dad until, you know, it's way too late. So that makes sense to me. I think breath is it. Now, class, this is where it gets a little... I think Lancer is definitely passive, I would say. Maybe he's a rogue. It kind of makes sense because he's a Jack, and the Jack was originally like a roguish type character in cards. I remember reading about that in one of my first Deltarune Theory videos. Oh no, it was the Spade specific Jack of Spades, I think. That's supposed to be a roguish type. I think that does make sense, though, because he's taking breath, which is associated with, like, freedom and adaptability, and I mean, Lancer's... Oh, wow, that actually does work better than I thought. He's taking freedom from the situation and giving it to the main characters in both chapters, actually. In chapter 1, I was talking about it with Suzy, where he essentially gives Suzy the freedom to be a better person through hanging out with him. But in chapter 2, Lancer is also the key to our freedom from Queen's jail. So yeah, that makes sense to me. He's giving us freedom, essentially. That makes sense. Okay. Birdly. Birdly. Well, he definitely feels like he would be mined. The problem is, that's a front. It's not real. He's not really a great thinker that's all about building things. He's just acting like that. And you know, there is an aspect that's all about forging identity, and that's heart. So the heart aspect is essentially someone who's extremely reflective, like self-reflective. In the here I have the tags as being self-obsessed, obsessed with forging an identity, and being overbearing. Which, yeah, that does sound like Birdly, huh? Yeah. It's essentially like being really, like, self-isolating because you're so worried about trying to present yourself a specific sort of way. Like, you're trying to figure yourself out all the time. Which, yeah, that makes sense. Now, class. This is where I struggle a little bit. Let's see. Honestly, he could be a page of heart. That actually makes a lot of sense. I didn't have to think about that as hard as I thought I would. Because Birdley is just starting to actually self-reflect and not just do the I have a forged identity part. You know what I mean? Like I have an outward sort of persona that I'm putting off. So him sucking ass at being self-reflective, but being a heartbound, that actually does make sense to me. And then, like, maybe eventually he'll grow to be really emotionally mature. Yeah, I'm sure that'll happen. That is the thing about pages, though, is like the only time we ever saw a page actually reach their potential in Homestuck was by force. So, you know. Alright, let's do Sham, I guess. We'll just go in order. Sham is extremely doom-bound. That's just, yeah. Nihilism. It just makes sense. But what kind of nihilism? I could actually see... I could actually see maybe Rogue of Doom. Because in the same way that, like, you know, I was talking about earlier, Lancer sharing freedom with the party. Sham is sharing doom with the party, in a way, by, you know, guiding them to these secret bosses. And I'm sure the Shadow Crystals are going to go towards something that definitely won't cause doom. Totally. So yeah, maybe, wow, Rogue of Doom. Thanks for giving us Doom, Sham. Very cool. Jockington. You'd think Jockington would be extremely simple, because Jockington is an extremely simple character, but the problem is I don't know that much about Jockington. I mean, maybe Jockington is heartbound, maybe, because, I mean, he is very obsessed with a persona. That's true. That might be the best we're gonna get. I wouldn't say he's anything else. Maybe he's dismissive, maybe. But I don't think he's void. Actually, well, maybe he is void. Because he's devoid of personality. I'm kidding. Void aspect is all about keeping secrets, creating things from the ground up, but being dismissive of what's already been made, what other people have made. Which that does kind of feel like Jockington, right? Dismissive of what other people have made and constantly wanting to create things yourself does feel like him. Like, that's kind of his whole vibe with the group project when you see him in the library in chapter 1 and stuff. He's like, yeah, I printed out 15 sports ball pictures. That'll help, you know? And maybe being secretive because he's hiding his true feelings all the time behind this cool persona. I kind of like it. I kind of like it. What class is he, though? You know what? He might be a bard. Which is kind of funny, because I could definitely see him being a bard in the actual game if he ends up in the Dark World. But bards are all about allowing their aspect to be destroyed or allowing their aspect to destroy, and they're passive, so they don't do anything about it, essentially. So, like, Jockington is allowing destruction through, like, secrets and being dismissive of other people's ideas. He's allowing things to be destroyed that would have been created if he wasn't there. So kind of a mean take on Jockington, but hey, it kind of fits. Okay. I feel like Spamton and Jevil are going to be extremely easy to classify, so we're going to do Ralsei first. Ralsei, I mean, he definitely feels like he is life-bound. Life is predictably all about, you know, protecting life. Being a healer, being an empath, but also kind of being a know-it-all, which, yeah, that does feel like Ralsei completely. So, what about class? I actually think maybe... Ooh, now I have two, damn. I was gonna say, maybe Maid makes sense. I mean, he did really love being a butler in that one scene. Um, but Maid is like protecting aspect. I said that earlier, right? And Raul say protecting life. That kind of, and also like with the whole empathy thing, protecting people's feelings, maybe even from the truth. That really does feel like Raul say. So I'm gonna put him in Maid. Okay, Chris. Oh boy, this one's tough. But then again, maybe not. Because Chris is all about sort of being introverted. So maybe that's not that hard to find in here. Maybe space makes sense. Let's go to space and then I will talk about it. There we go. Space is predictably about, big things. Space is about the big picture. It's about new ideas, but it's also about sort of being detached from the here and now, which that's not terrible. I don't know if that necessarily is totally right for Chris. Maybe time, just jumping from space to time. Time is about essentially fighting against whatever is going on, being resourceful, but also impulsive. So just like pushing forward no matter what is kind of what time's thing is, which does feel more like Chris. And there's also that thing where, I mean, this was mentioned in the wiki, and I didn't put it in my page, but I do remember it, where time-bound people seem to sort of create, they like hide behind something, essentially, like they hide themselves a little bit. Like Dave has these sunglasses that he wears, so that people can't like read him, you know what I mean? And Aradia is also very aloof in a way that, makes it hard to read her as well. So yeah, maybe time makes sense. I kind of like that. But the what of time is the question. I kind of like which. I kind of like thief as well. So which is about the way I've sort of got it here is like dominating your aspect. In other words, like pushing your aspect beyond what you're supposed to be able to do with it. In Homestuck, the two examples are there is a witch of life who is able to essentially create an afterlife for everybody who's died in the course of the game, which is then like it's something beyond life, right? It's pushing it beyond life. And there's also a witch of space who is able to totally manipulate space in ways that kind of go beyond the natural scope of what you'd think space aspect would be about. Like, shrinking and growing things and traveling at light speed and that kind of thing. So maybe that makes sense. Like if you believe time loop theory, for example. Maybe Chris is trying to essentially dominate time, like beat the clock or whatever on this world before it ends. Or, time is not just about literal time, but it's about pushing forward to a goal. So Chris dominating the story essentially to push forward to a goal, that kind of makes sense. That's probably the best I'm going to get. So we'll see how you guys feel about that. Jevil. Well, Jevil's all about the chaos. And thankfully, there is an aspect that's all about the chaos as well, which is rage. I already described rage with Suzy, but yeah, it's it's about tearing things down and maybe being a little cruel while doing it. But sometimes what rises from the ashes will be better than what was there. Now, the Bard is also linked to chaos, and this is mostly just because there is a Bard of Rage in Homestuck who is a very chaotic character. So the little chaos essence has leaked into the descriptions of these two things. but it does kind of fit for Jevil, I gotta be honest. Jevil is not one who uses chaos to destroy intentionally. Jevil is one who allows chaos to destroy without stopping it. You know what I mean? He creates chaos. He doesn't destroy with it, but he just creates it and then it destroys, you know? So it's like a passive destruction through chaos, which, yeah, that feels like Jevil. That feels right. Okay, Noel. Oof, Noel's going to be tough, I think. Maybe she's mind-bound? I talked about this earlier. Mind is about being a thinker, a builder, but also, you know, thinking of so many paths and directions that can be taken that they can be a little indecisive, which kind of feels like Noel. Like, you could say Noel is indecisive. I feel like the better word would just be shy or not willing to sort of stand up for herself. You know what I mean? But is there really anything else that makes more sense? Maybe breath? Breath is about being adaptable and inspiring, but also avoidant, which Noel is avoidant. And I would say Noel's pretty adaptable. I don't know. I don't know if she's inspiring. I guess kind of, though. In the same way Lancer's inspiring to Suzy to, like, be a better person. Noel is also that. I could go either way, to be honest. Maybe if we figure out the class, the aspect will become more obvious. Because Noel feels... Well, okay, here's the problem. I was going to say Noel feels passive, but in the Snowgrave route, obviously not. But we're going to go with base Noel, all right? Which is definitely passive. So in passive, we have a few options. Of the ones we've already talked about, we have Seer, we have Air. Actually, did we talk about Air? We talked about Air Chair. I don't know if we talked about actually Air. But we talked about Rogue, and we talked about Bard. Air is about essentially becoming one with your aspect, or like embodying your aspect. So being sort of like a time bound that's very punctual, or a breath bound that is very like free floating, and you know, that kind of stuff. And then Sylph, which is also passive, is about healing or repairing their aspect, at least in my interpretation. But that also doesn't feel like Noel either. Like, if we're saying she's mind-bound, let's say, I don't think, because I think she's definitely not repairing, like, freedom for people. She's, like, getting people to think about different paths in their lives? Maybe? She's, like, healing their ability to think sounds stupid, but you know what I mean? Like, their ability to open their mind to new decisions, not just, you know, go with the flow. But I don't know if that's correct. I don't think that really makes sense. Okay, there is something else we can do if we're stuck. Because there are two classes that are about destroying your aspect, right? Bard is about destroying, like allowing your aspect to destroy without stopping it for the most part. But Prince as a class is about essentially destroying your aspect. It's essentially like a negative class where it's like, oh yeah, you're heart-bound? Well, actually, if you're a Prince of Heart, then you're about destroying your self-image or whatever. So maybe Noel is about destroying secrets, destroying nihilism, destroying freedom, destroying chaos, destroying, well, I already said that, but self-obsession, destroying free thought, destroying stubbornness and time, destroying light. Light is about, we haven't talked about light, but they're a seeker of a thing. and they're attracted to the spotlight while not being too bound by rules or laws. Destroyer of the big picture? Destroyer of life, that's definitely not true. Destroyer of bonds, I mean, maybe Snowgrave Noel. Destroyer of the future, or like a future. Also doesn't feel like Noel. I think maybe the most logical one, if we're going with Prince as like a destroyer or something, it would be the destroyer of secrets? So the destroyer of void? So void is about being secretive, it's about creating new things, and it's about destroying old things. Or maybe not destroying, but dismissing old things. So a Prince of Void would be about exposing secrets, allowing the status quo to survive, and not challenging old things. Like destroying innovation for the sake of the status quo. Which maybe makes sense. I know that's, again, a kind of a pessimistic take on Noel, but it doesn't have to be like, oh yeah, she's going to totally play into this, you know? Like maybe she can subvert these expectations. But the idea that like she's too afraid of change, essentially, and she's too afraid of what has been lost, that actually does make a lot of sense, right? With Des and Rudy, she's afraid of massive change, and she doesn't, she's a seeker of, you know, secrets. So she's an exposer of secrets. She's trying to, maybe she is light. Does light kind of make sense? Because she's seeking death, right? It's tough. I could see either way. I think I'm going to stick with Prince of Void because I like the idea that she's so afraid of change that she's preserving the status quo in whatever way she can. Sort of that toxic positivity thing I was talking about in my Chapter 4 predictions video. So yeah, I'm going to leave that there. And you know, you never know. Maybe it'll change for her as the chapters go on. And Spamton. So, Spamton also feels very Doom oriented, but I actually think maybe Light makes more sense. Spamton's all about deals, right? And Light's all about seeking something through any means necessary, and also seeking the spotlight, which does feel like Spamton. Like, Spamton wants to be a big shot. He wants to be on top of the world. He wants to rule Queen's castle, right? He wants the spotlight. And he's also willing to do things that are, like, illegal or unnecessary to get what he wants. And he's also seeking, you know, power and money. So, a seeker of things that's a little bit shady does sound like Spamton. And then what class? I don't want to just go Thief of Light, because if you don't know, that's Vriska's aspect, probably the one Homestuck character you've heard of. But it does kind of make sense. Like, he's trying to take the spotlight for himself. He's literally trying to steal your money, which is the thing he's seeking. So I think I just have to go Thief of Light. Oh boy. Spamton and Vriska shaking hands. Anyway, that's the video. Kind of fun. We had no mind bounds and no blood bounds. Blood bounds make sense to me because we don't really have anybody in Deltarune that's all about, like, let's get the group together and, like, do cool things with one another. It's mostly they're either friends or from school, or they're just, like, hanging out with each other because they have to. I mean, I guess arguably Ralsei is the most bloodbound of anybody, but I like Maid of Life better. So yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. If you have your own Classpecting, you can post a list of those in the comments. I'd be interested to see how they differ. And yeah, thanks for watching. I will see you guys tomorrow for a less Homestuck knowledge related Deltarune video. Okay, bye.